3, 2, 1.
How about we do it again?
6, 7, 4, 3, 2, 1. I think I farted.
Okay, let's try one more
I
time.
definitely
Ready?
I can move you. Making review. Making review.
Say 6,
6,
5,
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hello and welcome to episode 89 of Rank and Review, Military Response. This episode, your host and random Canadian Larry Parsons and his guest Chris Tomic are going to discuss 6 films in which the military involves itself with some supernatural shenanigans. So I hope you're interested in this episode. I hope you have a lot of fun with it. It is a recording over Skype. Chris was talking to me from Perth, Australia, but I think it ended up sounding pretty darn good, and I think you've got a good episode ahead. If you would like to agree or disagree with me on that, you could send feedback to rankandreview@gmail.com. That's ranknreveiew@gmail.com. You can find the show on Facebook, you can find the show on iTunes, and as always, please be warned, there's going to be some coarse language, and there's going to be some spoilers. Thank you for listening to Rank and Review. Tell a friend, and enjoy. The last time you were here, brother, we talked about action bloodlust, is what we called it. And now you're returning, and we're going to talk about what I'm calling military response. Most of these are horror movies. I would say 5 out of 6 for sure. You could call it definitely horror element. They're all fantastical, but they all sort of focus on a military response to a monster or a catastrophe or whatever. You chose this list out of a list of many lists. I'm curious as to why.
Well, my sort of fascinations lie in history, and the military is the most important part of history as far as I'm concerned. And so I've always had an interest in military things, and it's always fun to see how militaries are portrayed on screen versus how my understanding of them, especially in low budget horror films in particular. There's
it can be difficult.
Lots of details are lost.
I recently reviewed the important cultural classic Zombie Strippers, in which in which I was highly critical of how the military was portrayed, in that they were portrayed in a very inauthentic and ridiculous manner. But the movie was, on its face, inauthentic and ridiculous. I think, although these movies are disparate, what they have in common is that they're at least attempting to take the military aspect somewhat seriously.
Yeah, I agree. There's not a in the classic zombie movie, the military is overwhelmed in minutes, yet 6 random civilians can withstand the horde for months. So at least in this, they put up a fight for the most part.
Yeah. It's not particularly military history, which I know you're very specifically interested in. But is there a particular insight you're going to be able to bring to this? I mean, I've known a lot of people in the military, but I myself am like a total flower child hippie dude, right? I would swim a river to avoid a fight. There's very few situations I can imagine in which I would want to, line up to do physical damage to anybody. But I know a lot of people in that world, so I can sort of sniff inauthenticity in movies like this. Like, I know when people are putting it on. Like, as a rule, they tend to take it very fucking seriously. Right?
Well, I guess I'm unusual in a way that I am interested in military history, but I would never like what learning about military history taught me that I have no interest in being in any war or fight or anything because it's awful.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That seems to be the like uniform lesson. Like, you can have the discussion, and can somebody come out of a battle experience or an experience of war and still retain some of their soul, or still be the same person they were before they enlisted? And the answer seems to be invariably nope, nope, and no. Like it will change you for the worse, no matter how noble your cause.
Yeah, exactly. And when you've got, supernatural monsters involved, that's got to be worse, right?
Yeah. But what I like about this is that it takes the gray out of the battle in a lot of ways.
Yep.
A lot of war movies, we have this sort of morality that we have to face. That these people are coming from two different perspectives that have become so heightened that they're literally killing each other now. But you can have usually empathy for both sides. Whereas when you have a big monster or like an alien that's here to drain our oceans, we have no problem seeing their machine guns, getting cut down and exploded. We don't relate to them. They're monsters. So
yeah, it's true.
It's much easier for the rah hoorah stuff to work in this context.
That's true. And it's a good point, because it kind of, these movies, well, in this sort of movie, you can go back to the old like propaganda films, or like 50s John Wayne, where it was just like them dirty Japs or the Nazis, slaughtering them as if they were monsters. And how modern movies do try to portray the other side. And with these ones, you could just go back to, like basically how great the United States military might be shooting aliens, for example.
Yeah.
Yeah, without any ambiguity.
Indeed. So there's a fine line in movies for me too. I love like Predator's one right up there with me for like monster movies. I fucking love it, and a big part of it is that military side. That these are a bunch of badasses that get in way over their head. They're guys who are not used to facing something that's a challenge. They can handle anything. And I think that attitude is bred into a lot of like Marine style hoorah, characters. Movies do tend to deal in cliches, and particularly military themes. We tend to see repeated characteristics over and over again throughout films. We are going to run into them here. I think every one of these films is at least guilty of one outright cliche.
Cookie cutter characters for sure abound.
I think you got a tough list this week, brother, but I take solace in that you chose it. So I feel less guilty, like I didn't, inflict this upon you. But is there anything you wanted to say by way of introduction before I go through the movies we're going to talk about when we do this episode of Rank and Review?
No, let's go.
Thank you for doing this all the way from Perth, Australia. Interestingly enough, Chris is currently talking to me from the future, and I'm currently talking to him from his past, and presumably everybody who's listening to this is listening to this in the future. I just got a nosebleed, so... technology is wonderful. I can connect with Rank and Reviewers around the world now. It's amazing.
We do live in the future already.
Yeah, we live in the future, despite President Trump. Anyway, the 6 military response genre movies that I have selected this week, we have Battle Los Angeles, starring dimple-chinned Aaron Eckhart. We have Starship Troopers 2. We have Red Sands. We have The Hills Have Eyes 2 remake. So not the 70s Hills Have Eyes 2, but the early aughts Hills Have Eyes 2, I think. Ang Lee's Hulk made its way into the list by default. And lastly, I'm going to take another run at Outpost, which is sort of a Nazi zombie picture that I reviewed way back in episode 11 while suffering heat stroke. So Chris and I are going to unpack that one again, see if we can maybe get our hands a little dirty. Anything else you want to say before we do this, brother?
No, let's do it.
All right. Boom.
On February 25th, 1942, 100,000 people witnessed something in the skies above Los Angeles. Over 1,400 anti-aircraft rounds were fired by the U.S. military, to no effect. This actual encounter was only the beginning. Their objective has never been explained until now.
These objects were completely undetected until they entered our atmosphere.
What we just witnessed come out of the ocean.
12 different locations across the globe were breached.
There are massive casualties in Moscow, Paris. We lost communications with Tokyo, Rio, and New York.
We cannot lose Los Angeles.
So this verite style in movies, I think, is becoming increasingly popular, to some people's sort of frustration. I think it's been popularized by directors like Paul Greengrass and Danny Boyle. It's sort of the style where the camera's constantly shaky and moving. It feels almost like it's a documentary crew following our people around, but it's not presenting itself as a found footage movie. It's just got a lot of movement, a lot of chaos, it's a hectic frame constantly. And this is a good method for getting reality out of action scenes and chase scenes. But some people find it disorienting. There's this weird sort of Blair Witch effect where when the camera never stays still for long enough, some people, start grabbing the puke bags. If there's a flaw with, like, Battle Los Angeles, as far as, a movie setting itself goals and, how they achieve them, this is an alien invasion movie where we get in dirty at the ground with a bunch of Marines who are fighting off an alien invasion. And I think that it's completely successful in doing what it's attempting to do. How much somebody enjoys that is going to be sort of relative to the person. I really kind of got into it. I think that it worked. And I think that the acting was uniformly strong and that the special effects, although almost 90% CGI, really worked for me. So, as our first movie jumping into the military response, I'm quite impressed with Battle Los Angeles, but I'm completely willing to hear a second opinion.
No, you won't hear any arguments from me. This is a solid film.
It's tough.
It's not. It's definitely not cinema verite or whatever, but it achieves what it wants to achieve. It gives you a almost first person view of an alien invasion.
Yeah,
it's good, and the effects are astonishingly good.
Yeah,
like especially like the landscape shots of like Los Angeles under attack. When they have the night, there's a scene where they're flying in their helicopter at night and the city's on fire. And I actually, just for a moment, I was like, oh, that's not really Los Angeles on fire.
Yeah.
That's all just effects. And it was just, I just for a moment, just like appreciated how good it looked.
Hilariously, they didn't even shoot this movie in Los Angeles, believe it or not.
No?
It would have been way too expensive and costly. They shot it somewhere in the southern states and redressed and put up some palm trees. And basically, most of the time they were shooting in ruins and rubble, so it was easy enough to fake.
Yeah, exactly. Any American city looks, I guess, pretty much the same when you're just running around suburban houses and city blocks on fire.
The trajectory of the film is following this squad of Marines. Basically, we spend the first hour of the movie, the first little bit of the movie, we have the getting to know you scenes, which are necessary, so we recognize one face from another. But basically, once the action starts, our heroes are just getting their asses handed to them for most of the movie. Like it eventually leads to a significant victory, which signifies presumably the turning of the tide of the battle. But it's far from over with. This is not Independence Day where somebody gives the aliens a virus and suddenly they go away.
All the aliens disappear. Well, I like that in this film, that it's like, now that we've achieved the Independence style victory, it's very much like a new Independence Day, right?
Yeah.
But like done sort of more seriously or competently.
It's treated more District. What was that movie? District 19.
District 9.
District 9. Yeah, I think that sort of set the tone that this movie sort of vibed on. I don't think they're counterfeiting it or anything. Just the atmosphere and feel of it, and that they were taking something pretty sci-fi, pretty outrageous, and presenting it as realistic a format as possible. So they don't. Yeah, when they defeat the aliens, it's like, now we have a chance. Yeah.
Not that's it. Not suddenly all the alien men just fall down.
Yeah. This advantage that the aliens have sort of been banking on has now been taken away, and the playing fields is somewhat leveled. But yeah, the day is not completely saved, And for every victory, there's harsh casualties.
Yes, so we are losing a lot of people, and I thought it was particularly effective. The infantryman, the soldier who gets cut off at the start of the movie,
right?
And then he gets wounded, and they go back and they rescue him, gets on the helicopter, and then gets killed anyway.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, that subverts expectations.
They spend a good 40 minutes getting to that helicopter sequence, and for some reason I felt it happening just moments before it happened. I said the helicopter's going to explode, and then a few seconds later the helicopter exploded. I still thought it was effective, but for some reason something told me there was some kind of tell that happened for me.
Yeah, but I mean, it's still it's very competent filmmaking, because all the Pavlov's guns they set up, they fire, right?
Yeah.
And then that scene, the helicopter scene, introduces the new plot, which is we have to stop the alien drones.
Yeah.
And give our Air Force a chance. I mean, I have to roll my eyes a bit at the start of the movie. Like, aliens have invaded, and now we have to send a single squad deep into enemy territory to find few random civilians. Like, I think just mark them off as casualties and deal with the alien invasion.
I've been pretty glowing, so let me say a few things against the movie.
Mm-hmm.
I think because this movie did have the full cooperation of the military, the portrayal of the military is very saintly. There's not even really any problem childs in the group as far as the military. Everybody is 100% noble and on task. Every death is tragic and noble and great, Every character is, a strong... There's a weird, almost, we're recruiting you for the military vibe to the movie that kind of sometimes makes me uncomfortable, right? But the flip side of the coin is that they don't, get in bed with the military, and it doesn't feel authentic. So it's sort of the line you have to walk. You either go the route of Black Hawk Down, where you portray the military authentically, but 100% positively, or you go the route of, let's say, to pick a name out of the air, Red Sands, where you just kind of try and fake it, right?
Yeah.
This movie isn't faking it, but I think that it cost it in giving some of our characters dimension. I think people would freak out and panic and run away to go try and just take care of their own family. I think you would see levels of insubordination. I think you would see people not making sense of, why are we risking our lives for this one pocket of civilians? Because there's pockets of civilians needing rescuing everywhere we go.
For sure.
Nobody at every point questions anything. Nobody is anything but absolutely perfectly on point. And that's maybe a little bit inauthentic.
The movie could have definitely benefited from, a few of characters freaking out. It's like, oh, the aliens invasion. Let's sort it out, lads. Someone should probably be losing their shit about that. Oh my God, does God exist anymore? Something like that.
The rules have completely been reset. And as far as they know, everybody they know is either, at the very least, in terrible danger, but could be, dead for all they know. Problematic. I also think that they overplayed their hand on the scale of the catastrophe. I can't remember. Maybe you can help me, but I think one of the news broadcasts say they're draining the ocean and have taken almost a third of the world's waters.
They say something like, no, they say the ocean levels have begun to appreciably drop, and I think that's already a global catastrophe. They've
Absolutely.
been there for an hour.
Yeah, I thought they said something like a third of the world's ocean. Like that would change the actual the weight of the planet itself. Like the repercussions would be so sudden and severe that it would it would be practically a planet-ending catastrophe.
Yeah, well,
so I think they might have overplayed their hand in the level of what these aliens were doing.
That's true. Well, there is get the news story exposition style updates, but the news wouldn't necessarily be 100% reliable in that. But it's still in movies. You just assume it is. So they could have made it a bit. They could have thrown in a few false news stories to give you a few things that obviously turn out to be wrong later, so that you can say, oh, it's a bit of an unreliable choir.
Yeah. And though water seems to be a rare thing in space, apparently ice isn't so much.
Yeah, there is apparently somewhere in space just like a massive thing of liquid water.
Yeah.
I read that somewhere. We need an excuse for the aliens to come here.
Yeah. And again, I don't want to be that guy suing that face. I don't want to spend the whole movie fighting the plot. The plot is aliens have come, and for some reason a line has been drawn in Los Angeles. And it works way more than it doesn't. Especially considering this director's pedigree, okay? He's most recently done the nouveau version of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. He did a not at all good sequel of the Clash of the Titans remake. He did an
Wrath of the Titans.
Wrath of the Titans. He did an okay, I guess, if you like that sort of thing, prequel to the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And an absolutely hilariously bad Australian shot horror movie called Darkness Falls. What I'm saying is I did not see this movie coming from Jonathan Liebesman. I was pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, it's solid. And for people who like military porn, this is it. Because there's gunships and helicopters and tanks all blasting aliens.
Yeah.
And the aliens, I think, are really cool. They look, kind of ramshackle. All their ships make all this crazy noise, and their engines are very primitive. And it looks, how they got here is a total mystery. But it looks like they're alien enough, but maybe we would stand a chance fighting them.
Yeah. And I like that we're learning about the aliens at the same time as our characters are. There's a really grisly scene where they drag in a half-dead alien and start cutting on it to try and see, where's the vulnerable spot? Where's, where do we need...
Bayonet autopsy.
Yeah, yeah. Some point during the autopsy, the alien would die, and they would, learn something from that. Or that little detail where they said that the weapons were actually surgically attached to the aliens. They were not able to drop their weapons.
Yes.
Kind of interesting, gives you an idea of how aggressive your opponent will be.
They give little hints to the background, they have leaders and they're hypothesizing that the grunts are being led, in a way sort of against their will. They're just following orders But still, you don't feel bad when they shoot one.
You can never. And when there's a really sort of heroic moment that's given to the Aaron Eckhart character where he blows up a gas station and takes out one of these alien gunships with it, but while he does it, he realizes it's not even manned.
Yeah.
This whole this thing that's been fucking with them mercilessly. There wasn't even one bad guy on board to even the scorecard. So it's pretty nihilistic, and I do think that the sudden worm turn at the end is maybe a little bit of a Hollywood thing in a movie that didn't feel overtly Hollywood. And, them charging back into battle after was, hoorah, sign up for the military.
Oh,
it really...
That's the worst part. I wish they would cut that last scene, because it's unnecessary.
Just for a split second, I've had flashes of the original Starship Troopers, right? And this movie had not been that. It had not been that. Michelle Rodriguez shows up playing the same character that she plays in every single movie. Which is to say
she just
she's
has to
fine,
get
but
her sassy or badass levels.
Yeah.
Do you want it at 40 or 60% today?
Yeah.
she's the worst part of the film for me.
Yeah?
It's just really distracting to see her in a way, because she doesn't feel like the other people feel they're sort of cliched characters. You know, you got the guy one day from retirement. Well, he's actually retired, but he retires on the day that the aliens come.
Yeah.
And then you've got like the new lieutenant. He's unsure of himself and blah blah blah.
Yeah.
But then you got Michelle Rodriguez, who is just like, she's just a cool Latino badass.
Tough as nails.
Like, she's Michelle Rodriguez.
Yeah. And again, that's just like, she's really good at playing Michelle Rodriguez, but every now and then I kind of wonder, can she legit do anything else? Because I honestly haven't seen it. And I'm not saying that what she does is bad. I'm just saying I couldn't differentiate her characters in the movies that I've seen of her.
Yeah, exactly. She's the same in Resident Evil. It's the same character. It's any film.
Yeah.
And that was annoying, just to have her there being, you know.
Michael Pena shows up as this nervous father who, wants to do the right thing, wants to be as cool and noble as the military, but because he hasn't dedicated his life to service, has to take one for the team. He learns to be noble at the cost of his own life. If only he'd spent his life training.
Yeah, I actually, I wasn't aware of him, Michael Pena.
Right.
When I first watched this movie,
right,
and then he's become more popular, sort of in comedic roles, and then I saw this with him in. I was like, oh, he's not doing bad. He's pretty good, in a serious role.
I think I saw him recently in End of Watch, which is a pretty gritty detective thriller. He's pretty solid in that, and I think he's on the rise again. I don't think he was stretching himself necessarily for this movie, but solid, like everybody else, like Aaron Eckhart himself. I think Aaron Eckhart's a really, really good actor, but Hollywood just doesn't know what to do with really, really good actors these days. You didn't need an actor as good as Aaron Eckhart, but it was nice that we had him. Aaron Eckhart famously got coffee thrown in his face for the role he played in this indie film called In the Company of Men, in which his character was so despicable that at whatever film festival he was, a woman who had seen the movie, threw coffee in his face.
Oh my God. poor guy. Some people need to understand movies aren't real, I guess.
Yeah. It's just a story that was on screen. But, good time, Battle Los Angeles. I don't know what more I want to say about it. Is there anything you want to say about it before we move on?
No, I think we covered it. Good, solid film. Yeah. Worth a watch. Sure.
It, like I said, it achieves what it wants to achieve. It was well done, and it was better than I'd expected. So, bravo to everyone involved. Now, sign up for the military.
You want to live forever?
Our war is going better than ever. But we need heroes. We need you. A bold new strategy calling for total war against the bug on every front.
They're building up. They're all around us.
Fall back! Where's my free outpost, Corporal? It's here!
What kind of bug is that?
Panda gets inside and takes over.
Getting the vision.
The whole species, they have a plan.
All personnel to the perimeter!
The original Starship Troopers for me is like a weird guilty pleasure of mine because I find so much of it intensely problematic, and yet I kind of dig it a lot at the same time too. It's got this weird Nazi youth vibe to it. It's got a lot of like wooden acting, and it's just crazy over the top in your face for 2 grueling hours of nonsense. And somewhere in amongst it, there is a tiny little insect brain, right? Paul Verhoeven did not show up for the sequel. Phil Tippett, who's mainly known for doing special effects, but who has worked on amazing projects. Like, the man knows his shit as far as, makeup effects. This was sort of his first dance as far as movies, and coming off the back of something as big as Starship Troopers, I'm sure this had a third of the budget. But
if that.
Yeah, for me, the problem, though, eventually comes down to being less about the budget and more about them tonally shifting almost too severely from the source. Like, the original Starship Troopers was in your face and over the top, and this movie sort of starts in that place and then tries to settle into this sort of darker, groovier, like Body Snatchers, The Thing type of horror movie. And I see what they're trying to do, and I see that being an easier beast to tackle with the lower budget and the restraints of this production that they were working on. But it doesn't feel like Starship Troopers to me. It feels like a completely different movie.
It comes across as definitely some amateur filmmakers' twist on Starship Troopers. They have, because they sort of try to work in the would you like to know more elements, the propaganda style elements of the first one, and then the dark twist is like, oh, we died pointlessly for nothing, but they're making heroes out of us.
Yes.
That's, which you can read into the first one, but it's not overtly stated that it's, this is trying to undercut it in a very clunky way.
Yeah, in a way, you could look at the entirety of the first Starship Troopers as a recruitment/propaganda piece that they would be showing to try and get people to sign up to go fight the bugs, right?
Yeah.
And that was something that they would either choose to do or not, one would think. And the fact that they just sort of half-heartedly winked at it for the first little while of the movie and then abandoned it entirely. I don't know.
Yes.
It felt a little bit disrespectful. It seems, like I say, tonally quite different. But if I discard all of that and try to just look at Starship Troopers 2 as a low-budget sci-fi horror movie, well, then I can be a little bit more forgiving. I still wouldn't say that it's anywhere near amazing, but I've seen a lot worse. A lot worse. And I think that the special effects and sort of the gotcha moments of the script work well enough that if you're going to sit down to rent Starship Troopers 2, you will get superficially what you would expect, in that there'll be a lot of grisly death by bugs. So yeah, I'm sort of two minds. At the end of the day, it's just kind of a movie that I'm neither here nor there about. It's hard to get passionate about it either way. But I don't think it's better than Starship Troopers. And like I said, I'm kind of guilty about my enjoyment of Starship Troopers.
Well, I should say that I was 12 or 13 when Starship Troopers came out. And so for me, it was the greatest thing I'd ever seen at the time.
Yeah.
Shooting aliens, dropping bombs and machine guns and boobies in the shower.
Yes.
I was at the perfect age for the first film, so I'll always enjoy it, unironically. But yeah, Starship Troopers Starship Troopers 2 does not capture the first film.
No.
And it has issues as a standalone sci-fi film as well.
Well, the plot of it, as it is sort of, we have a somewhat of an Alamo situation. We've got this group of soldiers who are sort of stuck and surrounded by a horde of bugs and are waiting to be rescued. And they get their hands to a high-ranking member of the military, a general who they need to get to safety and who is sort of their ticket out of there. His being there would prioritize their exit. The twist is a new bug has been exposed. A bug that can wear people as sort of a human suit almost and, slip in and be, unrecognized and make more, So again, we go to this Body Snatchers things where we're not sure who has been infected by the bugs and who hasn't. But it seems that the goal is this general. They get the general infected, and then basically the bugs are leading the troops. The tide of the war will change. So despite this huge epic battle going on in other places and in space that we can't see it because we can't afford it, the real important battle is going to sort of play out in this little bunker. And, who's who? Let's do our little low-budget version of the thing. And I've seen The Thing a lot. It's one of my favorite horror movies of all time. So if you're going to tread on that ground, you better bring something to the table. The only thing that I will give them points for is there's some pretty solid moments of special effects. When we first see a I can't talk today. When we first see a head bug revealed, like when they pull the bug out of the top of that dude's head, that looks pretty awful.
Well, I was flabbergasted by that scene because at the start of the movie, there's all their weapons are in the first film are blank firing rifles in plastic cases, and it's looks cool. Cases are spewing out of them. In this, they are like plastic tubes with a blinking light in the front.
Yeah.
Like literally like a light bulb.
Again, and then, that comes down to budget, right?
Yeah, I know. And then the bugs swarming in the background. I was thinking, is that like taken from the first film that they've just made dark and.
I don't know.
But then when
it could be repurposed.
Appears,
it might be repurposed animation. I don't know.
Maybe it looked. I was like looking at them, like seeing their movements and things. I was thinking, like, is that like taken? Have they like overlaid that effect from the first film? If they could, I don't know. But anyway, yeah. And then they have that scene, like some of those grisly effects shots of body horror shots, and I'm like, oh, that actually looks good. In a horrifying good way compared to what we've seen so far.
Yeah.
So props to them for that, because that does look grisly and cool.
There were a few moments where the movie lit up for me. The first guy that we find out is revealed to be a bug. When we first meet him, we kind of like him. We kind of think that his weird behavior is due to him being exhausted and kind of like just a bit of a spaz generally. But we realize that no, they need to fix the border, because if the bugs don't swarm in here and kill them, it'll seem suspicious, right? So,
yeah.
And it seems like this bug is wearing this human suit, and the human suit is wearing out fairly rapidly. And I kind of like that, the way that was played, I like that characterization. There's another scene where one of the privates gets infected by a whole group, like the entire room turns against her simultaneously. And it feels very rapey all of a sudden. The way they all close in on her, force her down on the table, and then infect her with this bug. And it was just weirdly, a strangely strong scene in a movie full of scenes that were not that strong. So credit where credit is due.
Yeah, there's sort of like this sexual theme maybe running through it, like the bugs are causing everyone to get kind of sexy as a way of spreading themselves, and yeah, it culminates in that in the rape vibe scene, and it's like you said, tonally, this is not Starship Troopers 1.
But sexuality being an important sort of element of it, I've never really minded. It was definitely present in the first Starship Troopers, and it makes more sense to me here in this sort of booyah environment, in that we're going to get our guts ripped out by a bug any day now, but we're going to kill as many of those bugs as possible. If you live under that mentality, then on your time off, you do as much fucking as you can, right? Because every day may be your last. This is living life to its your fullest, ? So, right. I didn't mind necessarily how sexual it was. Plus, it is a B movie. Like, this movie is sold on sex and violence. At some point, I'm just going to have to stop apologizing for it,
No, I mean, I'm fine with it. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But it's just the tone is dark. And it's kind of cool, it's a good excuse to put some titties in there, because the bugs, that's how the bugs are reproducing themselves.
Yeah.
By making everyone horny.
Well, and like, again, if I was one of those grunts, like in that situation, really believing we're either going to get rescued or we're going to die in the next 24 hours, and this beautiful blonde woman starts unbuttoning her shirt and luring me towards her bunk. Yeah, she's got me. I've got a bug in my brain. I'm sorry. There it is. I'm weak, Chris. I'm weak.
Might as well enjoy yourself before you get eaten by the bugs anyway.
So, like, if you think that maybe I'd like to check out Starship Troopers 2, it will be there for you. I mean, I can't really say that you should, like, fall over yourself to seek it out. But I'm not going to wag my finger too severely. First-time director, a third of the budget of the original film. Like, the main problem would probably go to the script. I think that the guy who was writing the script maybe didn't want to be writing Starship Troopers 2. He wanted to be writing the reboot to The Thing. And he just tried to, square that circle. And he just made this movie into the movie he wanted, It's arguably not as much Starship Troopers as even Starship Troopers 3 is, but I think it's moderately more successful than Starship Troopers 3. So there.
I think there's a scene right at the end which sort of highlights what you're saying, that the scriptwriter maybe didn't want to do it, or didn't quite get it, when a recruiter who's trying to encourage someone says, "More meat for the grinder,"
to the baby.
That's a positive thing. And it's like, in the first movie, that was like an embittered veteran saying that as a warning, not, that's not a good recruitment slogan.
And again, that was them finally throwing back to the over-the-top satire in the very last gasp of the movie. We saw a little bit at the beginning and a little bit at the end, but it didn't belong there. It really stuck out because of it.
It did, for sure.
Yeah.
Your staff sergeant was killed, as were all the other members of your squad. Somehow, you survived.
Welcome to your new home.
7 soldiers
Dismount. 360!
on a mission.
What is it, Wilcox?
Man, you shouldn't have shot that.
Just unleashed
What happened to these people?
their worst nightmare.
If you can hear me, we're stranded out here.
You're dead, man.
Run! Go!
There's something out there.
Red Sands.
Now, would you mind telling me what happened out there?
So, Red Sands. This one's really heartbreaking for me, and I'll tell you why. In episode 1 of Rank and Review, I reviewed fairly positively a micro-budget horror movie called Dead Birds. And much like Red Sands, it was a very ambitious horror movie on a tiny budget. But much unlike Red Sands, Dead Birds was quite successful in being a creepy sort of Lovecraftian Western. Whereas Red Sands is sort of going to step into the territory of the Jinn and try and sort of bring that kind of mythology to the screen. The guy who wrote the screenplay to this, Simon Barrett, has gone on to great things in the horror genre. He did 2 of the better segments from VHS 1 and 2. He wrote The Guest. He wrote The New Blair Witch. He wrote You're Next, a really good sort of funny home invasion thriller. And even before this Red Sands movie, he wrote a guilty pleasure B-movie of mine called Frankenfish, about a gigantic killer fish in the Cajun swamps. Like, I actually consider myself a fan. And when I heard that Red Sands was coming out from the same director as Dead Birds and this writer that I liked, I got excited about it. And it was such a heartbreaking experience to sit down and watch. Because, again, it's an ambitious horror movie. And for the budget, trying to do this thing that's set in Afghanistan, that's, got all these military guys, that's full of crazy Jinn special effects and firefights, and, they did not have the means to make this movie, I think, is the number one problem with the movie. But it's not its only problem. So the beans are out of the bag over here. I'm not a huge fan of Red Sands, but what do you have to say about it?
It's one of the worst films I've seen in recent memory. And it is a shame, because it's actually the film out of this list that I was most intrigued by,
right,
premise-wise, because I thought, there's a military horror film in Afghanistan, contemporary sort of conflict. That's a pretty fresh idea. And then the entire film is sort of on a small, badly not even in focus soundstage.
Yeah.
And it does not even come close to realizing its ambitions.
You already mentioned before I pressed record some of the worst CGI'd helicopters ever.
Yeah, like 90s quality computer game graphics.
Yeah, to the point, like, speaking as a micro-budget filmmaker, if I saw that footage, I would say, okay, we're officially just going to hear the helicopters now.
Sure.
You would be better served to just use a sound cue than that. If it's that bad, don't use it. Don't offend your audience that early in the movie.
No. Put color, like saturate some stock footage. You know, there's enough videos of helicopters flying around in the Middle East that you could pay to put some of that in your movie rather than rendering those horrendous helicopters. When you see something that bad, it just takes you out of it completely.
And it happens really quickly. You're taken out of the movie really early, and you're never really given reason to get back in.
Yeah.
I should do a little bit of service to the plot. Shane West plays the seeming sole survivor of a bunch of U.S. soldiers who were during a mission in the Middle East, get separated or somewhat lost from where they're supposed to be. And while they're trying to sort it out of boredom, one of them sort of destroys this ancient statue that's been uncovered in the sand. And thus doing releases this ancient evil, this jinn. And the powers of this jinn seems to be multifaceted and non-specific. I recently reviewed a movie called Death Watch, which was set in World War I, where a bunch of military guys are in an evil place and evil shit happens to them. And my big complaint was that, there was not enough about the evil to sort of give it a mythology or to make it make sense. It was just a bunch of crazy evil shit happened. And I kind of feel like Red Sands is that, but even worse.
I find that these horrors in movies are better when they have some defined rules, and that gives the characters something to think about, like to overcome, rather than just non-specific. Maybe it's making people crazy, or it's making hands come out of the sand, or it's
So this whole story
has no.
The whole story is being told to us by Shane West. Like I say, the Swords of Viber. He's telling it to J.K. Simmons, who's in this movie for some reason. Somebody had some photographs of J.K. Simmons that he did not want on the internet. I don't know. But yeah, that's another sort of thing that, in a way, it's sort of a familiar device. We're going to go back and see what happened. But in another way, we know not to get attached to anybody, right? So a lot of the suspense is killed there. And if the movie had the production value and sort of the, atmosphere to get past that, then maybe it could have, still made that work. But between, their knees being blown out by their budget and the fact that the movie gets deprived of its suspense by the wraparound sort of narrative, and that then the CGI effects are... embarrassing.
And just the cinematography in general is bad. It's just everything's sort of fuzzy and red.
Yeah.
And it's like lots of just close-ups of guys with fuzzy backgrounds.
Yeah.
and the characters are like ill-defined. There's the nerd, and there's like the main guy, and there's the sergeant, and then I can't remember anyone else.
Yeah.
Well, and there's a racist guy. There's sort of one interesting scene where the N-bomb is dropped.
Yeah.
And their black sergeant shoots the guy.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, it's kind of interesting.
You could see moments where if it had more to give, the scenes would have worked. I was talking about in Battle Los Angeles how all of the characters in that movie were very heroic, very noble, very, great. If they got killed, it wasn't because they were bad. It was because, cruel fate. In this one, it seems like all of the soldiers are bad. Every single one of them seems to have a war atrocity in their back back history that this jinn can exploit, or some terrible character flaw, like you say, the racist guy. And it's interesting, that is probably the most interesting scene of the movie, the one that you were just talking about, in that character obviously didn't like that his commanding officer was black, but he'd been putting up with it and just dealing with it and being okay with it. But as the situation got worse and worse and worse, his CO started legit losing his mind. Like, it was pretty transparent to everybody that he was losing his mind. And it was finally all of that tension that made that racism finally bubble over. And unfortunately, that cost him his life. Like, not that we should feel overly bad for him, but, like, it was a bad way to go. It would have been, like, it's interesting that as he dies, he says, you killed me, Master Sergeant, or is that what he was referring to him as? And, he just called him nigger a few seconds ago and was shot. And as he was dying, he chose not to call him that again, right? Like,
it could have been handled. If it was like in a better film, it'd be quite a good scene, because it makes you question, like, the guy is going crazy. Yeah, the racist guy has been sort of controlling his his nature, to whatever degree, and before the two guys are out, the guy makes them sit outside in the sand, watching nothing for hours at a time, and they're like talking about how he's losing his mind. And it's kind of the only sort of part in the film where it's, there's something interesting going on. Otherwise, it's a lot of sitting around. And
it makes me feel like if the production levels were more credible, that it might not have salvaged the script, because even though I am a fan of this writer, this is not his finest hour. J.K. Simmons has some terrible dialogue. Even J.K. Simmons couldn't sell some of that shit. Like, he asks one of the soldiers if he likes a unicorn, and when he says yes, he calls him a faggot, and that's supposed to be hilarious. It's just, like, really lazy, really... And again... part of this is my own fault, Chris, because I came in super excited for Red Sands. I love me some Dead Birds, and I would still say this, Alex Turner's previous movie to this, Dead Birds, it's not easy to get your hands to. It's not a lot of fuss around it. But if you can get your hands to it, check that shit out. That's low-budget horror done really well. This is sort of the opposite.
And this is another horror movie trope, I guess, of these military movies, of just sending a small group of people on some pointless mission where horrible things can happen to them.
Yeah. And that's going to just be how it is, guys.
Yeah. Yep.
The other really frustrating thing is this whole Jinn thing. As I've said many times in this podcast, I'm a fairly skeptical-minded guy, and I listen to a lot of skeptical podcasts and stuff like that. But there's another side of me where I will also listen to, like, paranormal podcasts and, like, call-in shows where people call in to talk about their encounters with UFOs and ghosts, because I find it fun to listen to, I don't have to believe it's real to find it interesting or frightening. Like, I just like a good scary yarn, I guess, is where I wash up. And lately, I've been hearing a lot of this Jinn stuff. People have been getting into this Jinn, this ancient mythology, It's not, the genie in the bottle is not this necessarily Aladdin idea that we have. These can be very malevolent, ancient, evil spirits that don't give a shit about granting wishes. They're more about tormenting you to amuse themselves. And I think that a really good movie could be made out of this premise. And I think the idea of, using American soldiers desecrating an ancient sort of religious artifact as sort of a metaphor for them invading ancient lands and using them as their battlegrounds for whatever political bullshit reason, there's a lot of stuff here that should have grown rich fruit.
Yeah.
And again, here I sit just fucking frustrated. So here's the challenge to you. I guess we talked about that one scene. Say something nice about Red Sands.
Oh, beyond that scene, no, you got me there.
I've stumped you.
You stumped me. Yeah, just that's it. The premise. I like the premise.
That's
all I can say.
Yeah. I guess that's all I can say, too. It's been short and sweet on Red Sands, but all I would do would be just, continuing to stump on some people that I legit think are, talented. I don't know what happened here. I honestly don't. Maybe they, got the funding for the movie before they were 100% ready to go, or they made a commitment and they made the best movie they could given the situation they had. And unfortunately, that's what this is. I'm happy that Simon Barrett's gone on to greater things. Alex Turner, I don't think ever really recovered from this. But it's a damn shame, Chris.
It is, yeah.
Do you guys know they used to use this as a test ground for A-bombs?
Where is everybody?
Hello!
Keep your eyes open.
You hear something? What is it?
Took her in there.
This just turned into a search and rescue mission.
How many do you think there are?
Too many.
They need the women to breed.
So, once upon a time, I reviewed Alexander Aja's remake of The Hills Have Eyes, and it very much surprised me that it ended up number 1 in my ranking of movies in that list. It was the episode Bad Trips. I thought it was really well made, and it got my blood up. I got angry watching that movie. This nice family got wronged by these hill folk, and I wanted to see them get some payback, and they fucking did. And we come to the sequel here, and this is kind of indelicate because we recently lost Wes Craven. In fact, about a year ago, I did a tribute episode to Wes Craven, and I will consider myself a fan. But he's one of these horror directors who is always a little bit ashamed that he was always locked in the genre box, and he would always brag that he would make his movies about something more than just violence, than just exploitation. It therefore puzzles me that Wes Craven and his son wrote the screenplay to this movie. Because honestly, there's nothing to this movie except for horrendous violence and really ugly sexuality. Like, the stuff that worked in the Aja remake is present in that there is some really well executed scenes of action and horror and fighting of these mutant hill folk, and some of that stuff works to a decent enough degree as sort of a thrill factory. But because the movie isn't about anything more than this, and because there is scenes that are so ugly that it kills any fun that the movie's attempting, I am disappointed by this sequel. But I would love to hear an Australian perspective.
Well, this is I haven't seen any of The Hills Have Eyes.
Oh, this is your first entry point, huh?
This is except I accidentally started watching The Hills Have Eyes to 1977,
which might actually even be worse than this movie.
And I was like, what is Larry talking about? This movie isn't
military.
He pitched to me.
Where are the military?
Yeah. And I was like, are these like strange hippie people in the army in some way later? But anyway, this movie, for the first half, I was just like, this is terrible. This is terrible film.
Vile.
And then the second half, it goes so over the top that I kind of got on board with the ridiculous ultra violence, and
it gradually becomes fun. It becomes
fun. Yeah, but it's not worth it, really. And it's juvenile as well. There's like there's a man in the toilet.
Yeah. Well, I gotta say that was a pretty effective jump scare.
Yeah, the hand
coming out of the porta potty. I think that's some sort of weird primal fear. Not necessarily that a hand would come out of the porta potty, but that something, or a snake or something, would be done. I heard this horrifying story. When I was a kid, I hung out with a lot of frontiersmen, and they had a place they hung out at the lake, but really old school. Well, you wouldn't call them porta potties. There were a hole in the ground and a shed over them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You basically sit on a wooden plant and shit into a hole.
There was squats in Australia.
Yeah, there was an outhouse is what they're usually referred to, right? But like, apparently the story was somebody went in to use the outhouse that hadn't been used in a long time, and as he was urinating into a hole, a bunch of bats flew out.
Oh my God.
Can you imagine? I'm so glad that didn't happen to me, but I heard that story as a kid, and every time I fucking go to one of those things, it comes to my mind, something could be down there. Anyway.
I'm not comfortable putting my genitals over anything which is just a dark hole, to be honest.
You're going to be a lonely
stretching away
guy
for eternity.
Anyway, premise. Basically, after the Carter family from the original movie suffered such a terrible fate, this whole area has been flagged. We found out in the first movie that they were using this area for missile testing. They told people to leave, but a lot of people decided instead of leaving their homes, they would hide in the mines and consequently got irradiated, and all of their offspring has grown into these hill folk. But apparently they've either killed or somehow run out of women, because the real focus of the narrative in the second one is that, like, they seem to be trying to reproduce. They seem to be trying to get more offspring. The movie opens in this utterly horrifying scene of this woman imprisoned in a cave giving birth, and before even giving a chance to hold her baby, being bludgeoned to death. And credits. And then they're going to try and be this goofy, fun movie full of one-liners and like beats of, you know, satire, or maybe not even satire. It's not even that smart.
No.
But, you know, a hand comes out of a toilet, and that made me jump. And, like, there is a craftsmanship to the movie. Like, it's not incompetent. Like, Red Sands, the movie we were just talking about, bordered on incompetent in its execution. And I certainly wouldn't say that about The Hills Have Eyes 2. I would just say it's not my kind of thing. And I come into it as a fan of Part 1. So...
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, high points in terms of production are definitely, like, the mutants look really cool.
Yeah.
You know, great makeup. They look so convincingly gross and deformed.
Memorably,
and
Derek Mears plays this guy whose skin seems to almost look like The Rock. He camouflages himself into the environments. Yeah. He also played Jason in the remake of Friday the 13th. He seems to show up in a lot of these horror movies. Yeah, I did like the look of the mutants, and I did like that at least one of the female military people who are coming in to secure the area gets kidnapped by the hill folks, and before she can be rescued by them is unfortunately raped. They give her a chance to avenge her rape by literally taking a sledgehammer to the genitalia of this creature.
Yeah.
But it was a really... Again, it's just part of the stupidity of the movie. It almost like they made that big bad guy get killed 3 times because, like, they wanted our hero, the main dude, to kill it. They wanted the hot chick, his sidekick, to contribute. But then they also had to, let this woman who'd been wronged have this sort of very personal, almost sexual revenge, right? So instead of just picking one of those, they did all fucking 3. They just killed him over and over. Now suddenly, these they're not just mutants; they are zombies. All of a sudden, like a piece of his brain falls on his fucking foot, and there's still fight in it. Like the stuff that I did like about the movie was, like I said, when we got later on into the movie, when we got into tunnels. And the group dynamics started falling apart in a way that, like, we didn't see in Battle of Los Angeles.
Yeah, no, it was good. And then there's like the friendly monster.
Yeah.
Like, what's like his motivations? Is he really helping them?
Yeah.
And their sets are great inside the caves. They look really grim and gritty, and there's lots of flies buzzing around human meat.
But again,
it's really gruesome.
I expect a slightly higher bar than Wes Craven. And Wes Craven has made some terrible movies. I'm not saying the man's infallible. But I mean, if we were able to sit down and talk to him, and unfortunately we can't, like, and we were to say, what is The Hills Have Eyes 2 about? He would probably, stroke his beard and give you some intellectual explanation. But it would be bullshit, because it was about money.
Yeah.
He wanted, his son wanted to get his foot in the door of the movie business, and he said, even in the documentary on the disc, that when they were approaching, who's going to write the screenplay, he said, well, my son and I could give you a script in a month, It was just something that he knew he could write quickly and easily that wouldn't be, It's transparent that he didn't care that deeply about it,
Just the paycheck.
Going back to, you said you watched some of the original 70s Hills of Eyes 2. That's an infamously terrible sequel. Like, it's full of flashbacks to the original movie. Like, that's a paycheck production. Like, again, he is not above doing terrible movies, but when he's on, he can be really interesting, which is why, when I saw his name attached to the screenplay, I gave myself hope that it would be about something more, but I was put off by that opening scene. Like, it took me out of the movie, put a sour look on my face, and it took almost an hour into the movie for me to recover and actually start, like, getting into the superficial fun thrills of the movie. That does seem to be a trigger for me, I'm going to confess. Rape?
Yeah.
Like, rape just fucking spoils the meal for me. Like, it's not entertaining to me.
No, and rape usually doesn't make a movie better.
Well,
yeah.
Going back to the original, though, one of the family members is raped in the original film. We don't see it particularly graphically, but it's a horrifying thing that happens to her, this violation, and it feeds into the revenge that the family has to do. And, like, I'm not saying that you're not allowed to have rape in your movie, but it felt like a necessary component of the story to sort of feed this emotional response that the ending will give in the first movie. And in the second movie, it just felt, hill folks rape, so let's have us some rape.
Yeah, gratuitous.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I just have to point out that this is maybe the worst portrayal of any military in a film. So, I guess maybe the excuse is they're National Guardsmen, but like their equipment is so bad. It looks so like they found it for $2 in some Chinese junk shop, and everything's sort of hanging off them. All of their pouches are always empty. They're meant to be on a training mission. They're carrying nothing.
Yeah.
And they when they go into the hills, the sergeant says, "Just bring one magazine. That shit's heavy."
It's not like, anybody's
Bullets
been
are heavy.
killed here before. It's not like a family didn't get slaughtered. It's not like their people we're supposed to meet here are missing. And it's not like we didn't just find a guy who literally hid in the bottom of a porta potty to avoid being killed by the... Ignore all of that. No.
Yeah.
This is a
magazine
check
is
your
fine.
brain at the door movie. And, I mean, for what it is, it's well made. I do think there's people out there that would like it more than I do. I just don't happen to like it that much. Good enough?
Yeah, that's good enough.
Countdown started.
Nanomeds released.
Bruce, I don't understand what I just saw.
It's like the gamma released something that was already there.
My son is unique, and the world will not tolerate his existence.
What did you do to me?
I improved on nature a million times more powerful.
My God.
I need everything we have to stop his movement.
You will only fuel his rage and make him stronger.
You know I never hurt you. When you're left with no choice.
I'm sending her a surprise visit from some friends of mine.
When you're pushed too far.
You pathetic freak.
Don't just get even. You're making me angry. Get mad. I don't think you're gonna like me when I'm angry.
So, as a rule, I like to say I'm a fan of Ang Lee. Okay, I think that he's made a lot of interesting and very different films, and as a visual stylist, he's very, very impressive. And earlier in this episode, we were talking about Red Sands, where I was saying, here's a movie that I got excited about, and consequently, I was maybe more disappointed than I even would have been otherwise. The idea of Ang Lee being selected to direct Hulk for the big screen seemed at once kind of way out of left field and kind of brilliant at the same time. Like, he was hot off of Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon at this time, so we knew that he could do an amazing action sequence. And he did, say that he wanted to, work in pushing special effects in the visual medium in a way that, his subsequent films like Life of Pi, which is just a visually absolutely incredible movie. He is a stylist that even his disappointments, I think, are worth looking at. And Hulk, unfortunately, has to be categorized as one of his disappointments. But I gotta say, I mean, talking to my buddy from Australia, when I heard Eric Bana was cast, when I heard Chopper Reed was cast as the Hulk, I got super excited. And then Ang Lee was doing the visuals, and some of the Spider-Man movies were out, but the Marvel Universe wasn't what it was yet, What people knew of the Hulk was either the comic book or that 70s TV show. So, we were finally getting a real Hulk smash movie. Bring it. Bring us some big green mutant monster fights. Bring us some Eric Bana, because I know that dude can bring the menace. And Ang Lee is going to make this movie look beautiful. And lo and behold, Jennifer Connelly, who, despite spending most of the movie eye-fucking me, gives a really strong performance. It's weird because she just won an Oscar, and people who win the Oscars, Halle Berry wins an Oscar, she goes and does a James Bond movie. Jennifer Connelly wins an Oscar, she does a superhero movie. Right? High profile, big money making picture. I love the style of the movie. I love the zip camera pans and the frames, and I love sort of the suppressed menace that you can see buried in Eric Bana. But he never gets to let it out. He never gets to let it out. So my heart is a little broken over this one, because I want to be saying, wow, this was the superhero movie that brought, to the next level. But it really isn't. It's a good swing. It's an interesting swing, but it is a failure.
I have to agree. And I love Eric Bana, particularly because he's Australian. He's got a Croatian father and a German mother, just like me. So we're very, very similar in my mind. But anyway, but it's just and what doesn't work particularly is and what they do well in the new films is that you feel that with the new Avengers, you feel like that Bruce Banner and the Hulk are one and the same. With this film, it seems like there's quite a powerful disconnect when he becomes the Hulk. It doesn't seem anything like there's no sort of hint of that in the Bruce Banner character in this film, for what I feel.
He may look more like we imagine the Hulk would look from the comic books, but I don't believe for a second that it's Eric Bana. Eric Bana leaves the movie and a cartoon takes over. This, they didn't manage Gollum or Smeagol or anything like that with this. The actor's translation didn't happen. I didn't believe the Hulk when he was the Hulk. It became a cartoon, and at times a pretty impressive looking cartoon, but I could never tell myself that it was anything but a cartoon. I this is the origin story of the Hulk. Bruce Banner gets irradiated by gamma rays, and if he gets too angry, he hulks out, turns into a rage creature, and this makes it difficult for his girlfriend and for his girlfriend's her father, who is a military fellow involved in the experiments and who needs to hunt the Hulk down.
Yeah. And there's very much a lot that's interesting in this film. You're talking about the cinematography and stuff, and just every shot is sort of fascinating. There's lots of like layered on layered on layered, like like trying to literally put a comic book on the screen.
Yeah.
And sometimes that works, and sometimes it's absurd. Like the most ridiculous shot is when the generic baddie guy. He's the evil baddie, and he's like, I'm going to take the Hulk out myself.
Right.
And
he gets
the grenade.
Josh Lucas.
And he gets and then it explodes behind him, huge explosion, and then he gets outlined in a white border, and it's like freeze frame, and it's so.
It gives you a second to enjoy that character's fate, or it shows you what the panel would look like in the comic book just for a split second.
Yeah.
And it does that, like, it seems like the page is turning here and there. But the movie's not written in sort of the quick, sort of spunky, cartoonish way that a comic book would, though, either. It takes itself very seriously. There's, like, emotional, like, connections and depth and tragedy. And then all of a sudden there's a fight with a, like, giant poodle monster.
Yeah, double Hulk poodles.
Yeah, these two dogs get hulked out, and he has this fight with them, defending Jennifer Connelly, who really kept on staring at me through the screen, like, what do you want from me, Jennifer Connelly? But whatever. The Hulk is fighting these two ridiculous-looking monsters, and again, I kept thinking, if this was in a comic book, I wouldn't be thinking twice, but here I am thinking, this movie's taking itself so seriously, why is it a fucking, French poodle and a bulldog monster that he's fighting? Like,
it's like all grim and dark in like outside in the night, and Jennifer Connelly's in the car, right?
Yeah,
and
she's locked in the car.
It's like Cujo, but and then it's like a huge green man punching a huge poodle, and it's just it's so absurd.
Once we get to the military base, the sequence you're talking about, where the dude Josh Lucas blows himself up, for me, like, the Hulk escaping the military base and like throwing the tanks halfway across the desert to have them splash down in a sand dune, that stuff genuinely put a smile on my face.
Yeah, that was the best part.
I
think the whole military angle in this.
And as ridiculous,
like Sam Elliott too.
Sam Elliott was running the guys who were chasing him down. Yeah, as ridiculous as it is that the Hulk jumps from place to place, I think they sold that surprisingly well too, fighting the tanks.
Yeah.
But sorry, you're saying Sam Elliott.
It looks good. Yeah, Sam Elliott is my favorite part of the film because he's the antagonist.
Yeah.
But he's not bad. He's doing what he thinks is right. He's trying to contain the Hulk, and you're not particularly against him. Really, I wasn't. I was like, mostly on his side. He's trying to stop this green rage monster from destroying America and killing his daughter.
You need a good actor for those roles too. Like he doesn't have a lot of interaction with the action going on. His job is to make it credible. And when he's giving that performance, he doesn't know what the Hulk's going to look like. He doesn't know what he's talking about. It reminds me of David Strathairn in the nouveau version of Godzilla, who spends that whole movie calling the behind-the-scenes shots, where's the location of Godzilla? You need somebody who can say that credibly, and that is a tall fucking order, right?
Yeah.
So, big props to Sam Elliott. I would say, warts and all, problems and all, that if the movie had ended when the Hulk escaped the military base, and then he was off to an uncertain future, the hunt would continue, maybe there'd be more Hulk movies, maybe there wouldn't. I would say that this movie was deeply flawed, but check it out. The problem is that the movie goes on for another half an hour. And by the time that half an hour is over, the bed has been so thoroughly shat upon that there's no salvaging it. And it's heartbreaking. This all falls at the feet of the script and of the unsubtle performance from Mr. Nick Nolte.
Yeah, we'll get to him in a moment. I was shocked when I saw... I saw this when it around when it came out, and then when I rewatched it, when he unrages in front of Jennifer Connelly, and then I was like, the movie has ended.
Yes.
And then I was like, wait a minute, it's not ended.
Not at all.
And then I was like, I remember it. I don't remember anything after this part when I watched it the first time.
You just blocked it out because it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
All of a sudden...
So Nick Nolte, his performance is... Wow.
He's credited
something
as
else.
father. They don't even give him a name, right? He's just this figure, is he going to be good? Is he going to be bad? Well, it turns out he's going to be bad. He's going to literally bite through a power cord and wolf out for this completely ridiculous, end of the movie. And, god damn, you're spending this much money, you're bringing this many people together. Really? Did nobody anywhere in the room say, this is the script we're shooting, we're all okay with this? You might have added several $1 million to the production, but either scrap that ending or reshoot it. And that's the heartbreaking thing. Like I said, if they ended the movie with the Hulk escaping from that military base, it still would have been a very so-so origin movie, but I would have given it a conditional, it's flawed, but check it out kind of review.
Yeah, and the final scene with when he's being shot at by cluster munitions and he's fighting the tanks, that's an excellent climax. It's really cool. He pulls the turret off a tank and he uses it to block a tank shell.
Yeah.
From another. It's cool.
And for a moment, Hulk smash, and the fans are happy, but you had to sort of fight your way through a lot of sludge to get there. And I weep for Eric Bana. Somebody give Eric Bana something to do. Damn it! I realized pretty early when I was watching the movie, I was like, oh no, because Eric Bana is Bruce Banner. Eric Bana's not the Hulk, and we need Eric Bana to be the Hulk. You guys, damn it!
Put some dots on him and get him out there acting.
Missed opportunity, you guys. And there it is. Like I said, at the end of the movie, everybody's sort of in an unfinished, sort of open-ended kind of place of the movie. Jennifer Connelly's upset, and I know that she spent a lot of that movie conflicted with her feelings about Eric Bana and distracted by the presence of me in the world. But she needed to get me out of her head and focus on the performance. Alas, it's a swing and a miss on the Hulk. It is definitely an interesting failure. Maybe the Marvel Universe wouldn't be what it is today if not for the misstep of this Hulk. But damn, you guys.
Them pick up their game.
Check out Life of Pi. Don't let this be the measure by which you judge Ang Lee, because he's an artist. I think he's legit. Just stay away from superheroes, dude.
Over 60 years ago, the war ended. But for 8 men...
You've worked with mercenaries before.
So what is real story, huh, Top?
Who unearthed the past.
An equation that could potentially alter reality. A soldier that was invulnerable, unstoppable.
The battle has just begun.
Bring it on.
They want soldiers. Let's give them soldiers.
Fucking Nazis, dude. Nazis are the worst.
They get a bad rap.
Do they? Do they get a bad rap, though? I think that the only thing worse than a zombie, the only thing worse than a Nazi would be a Nazi zombie. And that's what Ray Stevenson and his sort of gun-for-hire group are set against when they get set to investigate this bunker in somewhere Europe, where some Nazis had been doing studies involving fringe science and probably, supernatural. They have found the key to making the soldier that will not die. As long as they are within range of this device, this humming device, they are unkillable zombies. And Ray Stevenson and his group of soldiers get to find this out the hard way. They first have to find the bunker, find out what it is and what it does. And by the time that's happened, most of them are dead. Such is the premise of this dark and grisly horror movie called Outpost. For a movie about Nazi zombies, I'm going to come out and say it exceeds my expectations. I talked about this once before, a few years ago, with my friend Ryan Geezy. It was so hot in our garage that both he and I were having trouble articulating ourselves. So we're going to go round two. Originally, you and I were going to talk about the sequel, but we had a miscommunication. Happily, I had a nice little binge fest on Outpost, and I watched all three of them. So we are going to talk about Outpost. Badass British soldiers versus Nazi zombies. What'd you think, brother?
This was a surprisingly enjoyable film. I thought this didn't go the way I expected. I thought this is a Nazi zombie movie. There's going to be that's going to be the focus. It's going to be, literally fighting Nazi zombies, ridiculous looking Nazi zombies, the whole film. But no, there's like a real ratcheting of tension, and there's a long time into the movie before you get to know what's going on, and the group dynamics pretty interesting. They go to great efforts to make all the characters have little quirks, and they're a ragtag mercenary bunch. There's like a Russian one, they tease him, and then there's like a Southern American, he's like unhinged.
Well, and that's what I agree with you, man. I don't think they had a ton of money on this. They had good production design. They definitely had a good cinematographer and, DOP. But, they took their time. They let us get to know the guys in the group. Even whether we liked them or disliked them, we knew them a little bit before the shit went down. And when the shit goes down, the death in this movie, is grisly. There are some brutal kills, and I've got a pretty thick skin when it comes to shit like this. I'm not soft. I don't like to think that I am, but there's a couple of kills in this movie that just make me wince, and I think that they're technically well executed. That you'd probably get a reaction either way, but because I know the characters and give a shit a little bit, it makes the horror movie effectively horrifying, which is becoming an increasingly rare thing. For all the death we saw in The Hills Have Eyes 2, were you horrified?
No, I was laughing.
Yeah.
When the guy's climbing the hill and his arms get cut off and he goes, "Ah!" Yeah.
I was not laughing here, and I don't think I was meant to laugh. I think they set out to make a horror movie, and they spent time on things like atmosphere and character, so that when the blood comes, and yes, the blood must inevitably come, it matters. I'm a fan. I'm a big fan.
Yeah, it's effective, and you have the Nazi officer, and he's fairly early in the film. He's in the bunker as this mysterious naked guy they find in a pile of corpses.
Yep.
And they don't know what his deal is, and then they're freaking out and getting more and more unsettled, and then they execute him. And then he comes back.
Yep.
It's cool. It's a good film.
Yeah.
And when they're having firefights with nobody,
yeah,
it's tense. And they're bickering with each other. The dynamic's really great. One of them says, "I got him. I definitely got him," and the other one's like, "Well, you go out there and check."
Yeah, exactly. But. And this is one small quibble, and this is a thing that I think psychologically your instinct would be to continue firing. I understand it, but it did almost become frustrating. You can't kill them with your machine gun. It doesn't even seem to be slowing them down, and yet they keep on stopping and turning and firing their guns into them. This time it's going to work. This time, how about you try taking out their knees? Maybe they'll be crawling after you, They just, there's the military training, center mass, they just keep shooting them and shooting them in the body, and they just keep coming. And you'd think sooner or later one of them would fucking get the script on this. Okay, they're unkillable. They're unkillable.
They're unkillable. That's sort of the biggest problem, is that the zombies are sort of very weirdly inconsistent. Well, firstly, there's only so much punishment a human body could conceivably take.
Yeah.
Regardless of how they're animated, eventually it's going to fall apart. But that doesn't happen, so whatever. Okay, well, ignoring that. When they first sort of encounter the zombies, they're sort of like teleporting around spookily. Like they kill a guy, they stab him with in the gut with a pitchfork.
Yeah.
And then they're gone, they vanish. And then later they're kind of just shambling towards them. There's no consistency with them. There's no rules around them. They just do whatever the script writer wanted them to do at that time.
Yeah. After a point, it doesn't become about a battle about zombies. It's a battle against this tech.
Yeah.
This ancient Nazi tech that they managed to switch on. And how are they going to turn it off? There's some small details of this movie that I gotta love too. The propaganda film that they found, they run that animated film of like the glorious Nazi nation, that these soldiers are so badass that when they die, they'll just get back up and keep fighting for the cause. It was really well done. Really well done and felt authentic.
It felt, just like The Rocketeer. I instantly thought of The Rocketeer, which is my favorite in The Rocketeer when they're showing the flying Nazi Superman taking over the world and like the jetpack experiment that blows up and stuff. And then this movie does it too. The animated zombie gets up and keeps fighting for the fatherland.
My memory of The Rocketeer was just Jennifer Connelly staring out at me through the screen with these wanting eyes. It was distracting. But anyway, Outpost. I'm gonna have to make a subtitle for this episode. This is all about Jennifer Connelly. The death. I've already hit this point, but I want to say it again. There are some absolutely brutal deaths. When we get towards the end, there's one particular character who we like. He's been genuinely making the right moral call and the right call generally throughout the movie. And it's down to the last three of them, and they're just buying time to try and get this machine shut off. And he backs into a doorway and falls into this room, and he gets stabbed by about 5 Nazis simultaneously, just plunge these blades into him repeatedly. And he, gurgles out in this just really awful, disturbing manner. Another guy is trying to fight off a zombie as it's sliding a blade. The blade actually squeaks between his teeth as he's being stabbed. It's just absolutely nauseating. You're just like, wow, this is hardcore. This is capital H horror. And I was there's been so many zombie movies in the last while where everything is sort of half-hearted and not really serious, and they blow off somebody's head and it's a punchline. And I loved how horrifying the death was in this movie. It's a strange thing to say that I love that death where a guy gets a blade slid through his teeth, but so often, like you were talking about with Hills Have Eyes 2, I see an incredible act of violence and I just don't react at all. I don't empathize. It's just yep, that guy's dead. Another headshot, he's down. This movie made me feel things.
Yeah, they bothered to they don't rush it in a way, it's horrifying. It's going into his mouth and you're like, oh, it gives you a moment to think about that sensation. It's not like a jump scare moment or anything. It's effective.
We don't lead to a particularly happy place in this movie. I do think that I kind of knew that early. I don't know if that's a flaw or not, but by the time they were in the bunker and the machine was turned on, I had myself well convinced that nobody was making it out of this. And I don't mind, again, horror movies that have dark endings, but I typically prefer to be kind of surprised by them than for them to feel kind of inevitable.
They're falling back further and further into the bunker. They it didn't feel like they were going to get out. Yeah. I guess in a way that's a little refreshing. At least, there's no miraculous a helicopter. That's run to safety, but
And you get the feeling like everybody involved in some way in this story is somehow corrupt. The people who are looking for this bunker kind of want to get their hands on the tech, you feel like. And these mercenaries are just that. They're guns for hire. You kind of wonder what their jobs previous to this were. Some of the guys in the crew seem like pretty bad people.
Yes, for sure.
So
the acting is very solid in this film. There's nothing egregious at all. It's convincing. And the characters are suitably grisly. Like there's some of their faces. It's like there's no pretty boys in this movie.
No, that's very true. There's not some handsome lead that you count on making it through the movie. These are actors, good characters. You believe them to be badasses. The movie has 2 sequels. I kind of almost wish that it had 3, but the second one, it's about this woman who's hunting Nazi war criminals, who stumbles upon this tech, and the third is a sort of prequel that happens before even the events of the other 2 movies. It sort of talks about the establishment of the technology and the zombies in it, but the second movie kind of sort of ends on a cliffhanger note in a weird way, and I like all 3 of the movies. I mean, they're not amazing. They are Nazi zombie movies, but they're well enough produced and interesting enough in premise that I kind of would have taken even round 4. So I'm a surprise fan of Outpost. If you're a fan of zombies, definitely check it out. And generally speaking, if you like your horror movies to have teeth, this definitely is that. This isn't winking at you. This isn't Scream. This isn't remember those other horror movies of days gone by. This is remember when horror movies were scary and disturbing? Like this.
Yeah, they're not aping off anything particularly that I can think of anyway.
I think it's well worth a watch for fans of genre. Again, for fans of genre. If you're more of a Robin Williams kind of fan, then maybe not. But yeah, check it out. Anything else you want to say about Outpost, brother?
No, that's it.
So, all the way from Perth, Australia, this is my second big international episode. Are you selling the podcast to the good people of Perth?
My 2 friends are well informed.
Well, you see if your 2 friends can talk to get outside the social circle.
We'll keep trying.
Yes. Thank you for doing it again. It's been a blast. Military Response. What was your least favorite of these 6 movies and why?
Well, it has to be Red Sands is ranked last because it's the only good thing about it, premise and one effective sequence.
Yeah.
Well, arguably effective sequence does not make a good movie.
Yep.
It's bad cinematography, bad acting, bad scripts, and just the camera's not even in focus for most of the film. It's not good.
Heartbreaking.
Yeah. Second last, I'm going to put Starship Troopers 2. Despite there's a few pluses there. It's not the worst thing I've ever seen, but as a Starship Troopers sequel, it's tonally it's all wrong. It doesn't feel like it belongs in that universe, really. Yeah. And the obvious budget constraints are pretty appalling.
Yeah.
Next is Hills Have Eyes 2, and it's exploitative, it's over the top, it's it's a cash in. But halfway through the film, it starts ramping up to such a absurd level that I kind of got a little into it.
Yeah.
Next, I'm going to put Hulk, and this is so far up the list because of the other films that have preceded it. But it's like 50% of the way a good movie. It's got a lot of interesting scenes, some interesting characters, and some interesting elements, and interesting if unusual cinematography.
Yeah.
I can't hate it despite it, being such a disconnect between cartoon Hulk fighting and Eric Banner, the sad nerd, bullied nerd. And then it's a bit of a shambles. And then there's Nick Nolte being crazy in his war poodle. But it's entertaining. It's entertaining, if nothing else. All right. Second is Outpost, which is solid, effective horror film, and it's only really let down the zombies. Just a little lack of credibility because of they, don't have any seeming rules.
Yeah.
And obviously budget is not a huge, highly budgeted film. It's not. It's definitely not a visual feast, but it's good script, good characters, great horror, tense and surprisingly good, and Nazi zombies are fun.
Yeah.
And then first is Battle for LA, which is just a cool film, war film, cool alien invasion film.
Yeah.
And there's so much to enjoy in that film, and it's a shame that to make these movies in America with the military support, to get all that sweet equipment, kicking alien ass, you need to have unambiguously good guys who do everything in the name of patriotism and the love of freedom.
Best tool for United States military propaganda since Call of Duty, though, really.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm happy. I'm honestly happy, very happy for, if you're going to do a military propaganda film, don't fight some poor desert tribesman.
Yeah,
fight defend their country. You're shooting bad aliens who rock up on the beach and start shooting civilians.
Yeah.
Have at it. Join the army. Hoorah.
Yeah. Well, I gotta say, Chris, it's a really close list. So close that I'm a little bit heartbroken over it, because I'm not passionate about this. It's hard to give too deep a fuck about most of these movies. So, damn, if you're not super close to stealing the throne. Matt Risling, because I know Matt Risling is listening, you just got away with something here, buddy. Yeah, Red Sands is the worst of these movies, and it's heartbreaking to me because, I am a fan of a lot of people who are involved in this movie and remain a fan of a lot of people who are involved in this movie. It's just heartbreaking to see this much talent produce something that would make you believe that whoever made it did not have any talent, because I know that the opposite of that is the truth. So what happened? Genuinely, you guys, what happened? Unfortunately, so few people saw this movie that no one will find out because nobody cares. In fifth position, I put The Hills Have Eyes Part 2. And honestly, I do think it's sort of the rapey angle in that really disgusting opening sequence. I was really turned off by the movie early, and it took me a long time to win my way back. I also think on the theme of, the military response, this military team was the least credible of, probably
Yes.
all of these movies. So, it edged its way to fifth place. But again, I'm not passionate about it because it's not like Starship Troopers 2, which is in fourth place, is such an amazing fucking film, right?
Yeah, because it could have gone either way.
It's true. And what you said about it is absolutely true. It's so tonally off from the original Starship Troopers that I just kind of feel like on some level it just fails there. But if I just was able to isolate the fact that it wasn't a sequel, I might be able to be more forgiving of it. It's low budget, it's exploitive, it knows what it is, and within the box that it's put itself in, it's moderately effective, if completely forgettable. And you know,
it was harder for me to like separate that just because of my unabashed love for the Starship Troopers.
Right.
Because 13-year-old me, it was the greatest thing. I couldn't help it.
I mean, that whole movie is stolen from other movies. It's just weird that almost none of it is stolen from Starship Troopers, the movie it's a fucking sequel to. So the back half of our list is, of course, going to be identical. The Hulk is deeply flawed, but it's one of those frustrating movies where you can see the good movie just under the skin, And like I said, there's a few moments where they could have pulled the plug early, and I would have said it's flawed, but worth watching. But stick with this filmmaker. I got to see, this is tangential, but I'll say it anyway, the premiere of Life of Pi, sitting next to Jan Martel, the man who wrote the novel Life of Pi, in this big 3D screening. They actually wanded us before we got in. And I remember when I was sitting down to watch the movie being excited about another Ang Lee movie. But that one little reservation stung in my brain. But there was Hulk. There was Hulk. It is. There it is. You know what? If it wasn't 2 hours and 14 minutes or whatever it is, I still think it might have skated by with a very, very conditional pass. But Nick Nolte fucking pissed in the soup in the last 20 minutes. So
make it a tight 90, and it would be all right.
It would be totally watchable.
Yeah.
Outpost is a completely competent but nihilistic horror movie. It's dark and unpleasant almost, and if that's not your bag, it'll probably rub you the wrong way. But for the type of movie it is, it's worth a look. If you liked it, the sequels are worth a look. I think this probably will remain my favorite of the three, but it's just one of these movies that exceeded my expectations on almost every level. Again, not amazing, but totally worth it if you're in that mood, if you're a genre fan. And yes, Battle Los Angeles, despite the fact that I do think it's basically a recruiting tool, is an undeniably entertaining movie. This is the alien movie sort of post 9/11, right? Before 9/11, we had movies like Independence Day, where catastrophes were entertainment. And now we have movies like Battle Los Angeles, where catastrophes are terrifying. And I think that that is a step in the right direction. Not that B movies don't have their places, I love movies like Slither, and stuff like that too. But this movie takes itself seriously. It goes for the premise, however ridiculous it is, and it maintains its credibility in the wake of a lot of implausibility. So, big points across the board. It exceeded my expectations, and I look forward to hopefully being pleasantly surprised by this director sometime in the future. I did not make time for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, but who knows, maybe it's amazing.
That's not going to change your mind.
Okay, fair enough. I had a feeling. Thank you so much, Chris. I really do appreciate you doing this. Thanks for talking to me from the future.
That's all right. I'll let you know how things go off mic. Don't want to violate any temporal prime directives.
I appreciate it. Is there anything you wanted to say to the kids on the internet? Anything you wanted to promote, or anyone you wanted to say hello to?
No, I'm fine. Happy to talking to you, Larry.
Oh.
Thanks for listening, everybody. Thanks for having me.
It's always a pleasure, brother.
I really appreciate it. It's fun.
Have a look. Maybe we'll go round 3, huh?
Yeah, we shall. It's fun. Good choice of movies. Definitely fun to pick something I wouldn't necessarily just watch off, out of my own volition.
Can I give you a homework assignment?
Go ahead.
Watch the sequel to Outpost, because that was originally going to be the movie that we talked about, and since I'm all prepped for it, now I need to talk to somebody about that movie. So,
will do. I'll put it on my list.
You liked this one enough. Give it a look. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, for sure.
Thanks, brother. so endeth the lesson on military response. I hope you guys enjoyed that, and I hope you're going to keep on listening to Rank and Review. I will be back in 2 weeks with an episode on animation for adults, so tune in for that. In the meantime, send your feedback to rankandreview@gmail.com. That's RANKNREVIEW. Find the show on iTunes, find the show on Facebook, seek it out and add it to some of your favorite podcasting applications. And as always, tell a friend about Rank and Review. It's just the right thing to do. This is your host and random Canadian, Larry Parsons, as always, saying thank you so much for listening.